This is the Mental Metal Podcast, and I am your host, Coach Matt Toman. I'm a former athlete, teacher, coach, and athletic director that switched careers after surviving cancer and a stroke in the fall of 2020. But I'm also a dad of a son and a daughter that were successful high school athletes that went on to college. Now I use that experience along with my ICF coaching certification when helping teams, coaches, and athletes from all over the country. Each week, I will pose a specific question that will help coaches of all types better understand mental toughness. In the Mental Metal Podcast, coaches will learn to help their athletes overcome adversity without being the adversity they need to overcome. Welcome back, Metalheads. It's Coach Matt Toman here, and this is the Mental Metal Podcast. I'm going to start with some gratitude today. Thank you all so much for listening, so much for watching, so much for sharing, for liking it, subscribing, all those things. This is episode 13 and it's gone better than I expected and I love it. Continue to share it, like it, and continue to patronize the sponsors. Look at some of the stuff I'm putting out there if you're interested in how I operate, and look at Quick Cut and those things. That's how we keep this thing going, and I love it. And just being able to talk in that space of mental health in athletics is just a dream come for true for me. So, and to help me talk about it today, my first pro athlete on the show, his name's Skyler Bowlin. I've known him for years. He's played over 12 years in Europe ball. And honestly, I'm not going to say much at the beginning. We're going to let it roll. And I will catch you on the other side of this interview. So without further ado, Skyler Bowlin, pro athlete, coming up. Let's go. We are back and ready to go on the Mental Metal Podcast with my guest today, Skyler Bowlin. He is a professional basketball player that has played several years in Europe. I got to know Skyler because he was college teammates with my brother Keen at Missouri Southern, and then, of course, pro teammates for a bit. And what I was looking for today in talking with Skyler is he has, and I'll let him explain it here in a bit. I know you've played in several countries for several teams, and this being a podcast about the mentality of sports. I really want to speak to the sort of mentality you need to have to play professional basketball, because it's not all a dance through roses, as you're going to, I'm sure, attest as just from dealing with Keen and some other pro athletes that I know. But then also I want to really talk about the differences in some of the situations you've been, some of the different countries, the ups and the downs, really kind of getting into professional basketball overseas, and the good, the bad, the ugly, and all things in between. So give me a little bit of a rundown. I've got, I have your pro player page pulled up, and I can't even make it's so many languages and different,
it's crazy.
Yeah. Where all have you played?
Yeah.
Give me a little bit of rundown. Yeah, go ahead.
So coming out of college, I was in second league Germany, Augsburg, Germany. And then normally that's, you get there in August, you leave in May. And so that's what happened. And then right before I left in April or May, I was contacted by a team in Australia to go down there and play in the summer, which was their winter. So I went from my first year, I basically played from August to the next August, and then technically to the next May. So I went from Germany. Yeah, it was pretty awesome. It was tough. First year gone, and literally being gone basically 2 years. But yeah, I went from Augsburg, Germany, and I went down to Melbourne, Australia. Went home for 4 days. That's when me and your brother teamed up in Horsens, Denmark. I was there 1 year, decided to try to take a little chance, had a good year, try to take a chance to go to Austria. Was there for 3 months, didn't like the situation, was lucky enough to get back to Denmark in Horsens with your brother. And I stayed there for another 2 years. Then decided to make the jump and really try to make a big jump professionally. Went to right outside of Stockholm, Sweden. From there, got my big break and got to go into Germany in the top league. I was in Gießen, Germany, first year, Jena, Germany, my second year, 2 years in Würzburg, Germany. COVID hit. Unfortunately, had to leave there. Would have probably stayed there my whole career. Um, Decided I wanted to leave Germany. Got down to Thessaloniki, Greece. Uh, Wild experience. Yeah, I was there for most of the season. I left in February and went to Zielona Góra, Poland. Another wild experience. That whole year was interesting. And then wanted to get back to Germany. Was in Bonn, Germany, 2 years ago. Decided best for the family to get back to Denmark. So last season and this season we're in Aarhus, Denmark, where your brother also resides.
Yeah, and of course now he's retired but still lives over there.
Yes,
So it's a
exactly.
good endorsement for the town and
Yeah,
how
it's
well
an
you guys.
unbelievable city. This city is one of the coolest cities we've lived in. It's unbelievable to live in. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the count? How many different pro teams is that?
So so one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. I think it's nine,
Nine,
9 or 10, and this will be coming up 13 years.
10,
I've done the math
13
before, but
years.
I can't think of it. Yeah. So this will be my 13th season, which is unfathomable to me.
Oh, absolutely. It cannot like I still hear that Paragould Arkansas accent running around. Like you haven't
I
lost
thought I got
that.
rid of it. I thought during the season I normally get rid of it, but then I go back home and I'm talking to my parents and grandparents, and I'll just get it right back, and it's like, ugh.
Yeah.
And then, but I hear it also.
And that's I'm sure you do. And that's the point is 13 years playing
Yeah,
pro ball. And before we jumped on, you said, "Hey," I asked where you were, and you said, "I'm back home in Denmark." And
yeah.
it's a crazy. It cannot be what you imagined being coming out of high school.
No,
What where
coming
you
out
would
of
end up.
college, I wouldn't have thought that. This was coming out of college and experience. Like, oh, I'm able to go and play basketball for virtually no money in second league Germany. Like,
Right.
yeah, I'll do it for a year or two, and then the second year happened, and I got $100 raise, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go again, and then I got a little bit more raise the next year, and like it turned 1 or 2 years turned into 3 or 4 years, and then now I'm on year 13 and have a wife and a kid who are from here, Danish, or half
Yeah.
Danish, as my
Yeah.
son is.
Well, yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah. Uh, I think I would love you to talk about that misconception about, because people just ask me about that with Keen a little bit. He'd come over there and be like, oh, he must be making a ton. I'm like,
That's right. That's exactly right. Right.
and,
Yeah.
and, and it's not, and it can be more than that, but you got to love
Yeah.
it.
I mean, it was a grind. Like, no, you don't, especially where me and Keen came from, for instance. We're from Division II, Missouri Southern. Especially 13 years ago, you did not come out of Division II making money. You just didn't. I mean, me and Keen both had very, very good collegiate careers and had very good numbers, on paper, and were on very successful teams. But teams in Europe don't really know about the second division, or didn't back then. It's becoming more and more common, for guys to make a little more money coming out. But especially 13 years ago, you know, you didn't make any money, and I made less than $1,000 a month my first year in Denmark, or first year in Germany, and didn't make any more than that my second year in Denmark. And so no, like I remember going home my first 2 or 3 years, and people were like, "Oh man, I know you're just loving it over there and making a lot of money." And I wanted to tell them, like, "Dude, I'm riding a bicycle to basketball games. Like
Right.
rain, snow, sleet, or hail. If I want to get to the game, I'm walking, running, or biking, and that's it. Like that's a misconception. It was a grind. And I loved every second of it. And fortunately, I was able to take the right steps in my career to where by year 4 or 5, I was making a good enough salary to where I felt comfortable to continue doing it. And so, I've been very lucky in that aspect to continue to keep rising and making it a career out of it. But yeah, no, I mean, it was not all, like Division II schools had better facilities and treatment options than me and Keen had our first few years.
No, probably without a doubt.
Yeah,
It's
not
nowhere
even
close.
close. Not even close.
Uh, so you mentioned that you and Keen, and we're talking about you here, but about the success you had in college. Run that through for the guys listening and be like, I'm just going to go in and place it. Like, I know what your success level was in college, but lay it on me.
As far as awards and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So, well, first of all, starting in high school, I was just a skinny 6'1", 150-pound senior coming out of high school, and going into my senior year, didn't have any offers. Played on a big AAU team. Going into my senior year, I ended up being the last man on the bench, and had literally, I think I had one NAI offer, Bethel College in McKenzie, Tennessee,
yep.
which I lived there for 4 years of my life, and so they knew me. And then finally, like the last month of my summer going into my senior year, Missouri Southern saw me at a camp. I chose to skip my last AAU event and went to this camp in Atchison, Kansas, middle of nowhere, Kansas, outside of Kansas City a little bit. And Ronnie Russell saw me at a camp, offered me. I went and went on my visit there, I think in September, and said, boom, this is it. It was the first school that offered me other than Bethel, and it ended up being the only school. I got passed over by multiple schools in Arkansas that saw me play every day if they wanted to. And Missouri Southern offered me. I went on a visit and never looked back. And then I went into Missouri Southern, and it was everything just fit into place. It was such a crazy thing to think back and look at how it all just fit. Going into my freshman year, we the program was down a little bit, and they were trying to rebuild, and four of us came in freshmen, and I was expecting to be the backup point guard. That was what they kind of sold me on, backup point guard to a guard that had been there for 3 years and had big numbers as a guard, and a leader and stuff. He gets injured in preseason, and boom, they hand the keys to me. And first exhibition game against Tulsa, University of Tulsa, I had a really good game. I think I had 18 points against, and Tulsa at the time was a pretty good
Yeah.
program. And I never looked back. I was a starting point guard for essentially all 4 years. And I got freshman of the year my first year. And then I believe my sophomore year, I was second team all conference. And I think also junior year, second team all conference or first team, I can't remember. And then my senior year was when everything just fit into place. We were winning. We got up to number, I think, 10 in the nation, made the national tournament. And I was player of the year. I was defensive player of the year. I was regional player of the year. I was a top 8 national player of the year. All-star game. It was unbelievable the awards that I got. That I worked my butt off for. So like I do believe I deserved them. But it was it wasn't easy, and it was a grind, and never thought about leaving one day. Actually I lied. The first 2 weeks of preseason my freshman year, I was like, it's probably not working out. But other than that, man, it was just a unbelievable 4 years, and I'll do it all over again.
And 4 years, that's a phenomenal college career. And then right after you get out of college, you go over to pro, and you're like, hey, well, we'll give you $1,000 a month, I guess.
Yeah, 900. I remember there, and I love the club to this day. I still have a great relationship with my head coach, and I remember like I got an agent, and they were like, they want to offer you 900 euros a month, and I was like, okay, cool. And he's like, let me get you more, And we settled at 950. I was like, let's go. I thought I got him really, and I was like, as a 21-year-old, I was a young guy when I finished school there. Like, why not? Let's go. Like, I can live off of that, because everything is what people don't really, I think, understand also is that everything is paid for. I had a car my first year. They obviously pay for your apartment. They pay for your flights. A lot of places you get lunch, and sometimes even 2 meals a day. So I mean, the 950, I was able to save a little bit also, which was great.
And that's just it. That's what I love about explaining to that about you had, and don't give me the nonsense about the D1 versus D2, because when you're top 10 of the nation D2, you're really good school, and you guys would handle a lot of Division 1.
For sure.
Just that there is such a delineation. People think that pro athletes make so much money, and it's the ones you see on ESPN.
For sure.
And
And don't get me
then,
wrong. There is a lot of money in Europe. Like
yeah,
there are
that's more
teams
now.
that
There's more
yes,
now.
yes, but like there are teams that can pay. You see the guys coming over now in the Euro League, which are the top 18 teams in Europe. Yes, guys can make 1 million, 2 million euros a year. That's for sure there. But I would say, the majority of guys make less than 30, 40 grand a month.
Right.
The high paying jobs, there's few and far between. And I will say this, as far as Missouri Southern, going back to that, if you look back on my senior year, all 5 of our starters played professional basketball for multiple years.
I had that conversation with Coach Korn on this
Mm-hmm.
podcast about those things. And your situation being recruited by Coach Korn and Ronnie,
Mm-hmm.
similar to Keen.
Yes,
My
absolutely.
brother,
Coach Lauer, I
he,
remember, was Keen's guy. Yeah.
yeah. And when I asked, this was what was so interesting. If you listen to that podcast, I asked Coach Korn about how you develop mental toughness in players, and he really didn't have an
Yes,
answer.
I remember
And,
this.
and, I asked him, I said, well, you must be really good at finding it. And he was like, I never thought about it that way, but he clearly
Mm-hmm.
did, because that you were an All-American Player of the Year. The next year, Keen was an All-American for Division II, but neither one of you were recruited by anyone else, almost.
Nobody.
And that's, wow, just what a huge credit to that guy and
It
that
is. I mean,
staff.
it's. Yeah, I mean, you have to, for sure. The coaches see it. If guys are tough, if guys can play, a lot of it has to do with luck. A lot of it has to do with injury luck. And then how do guys react from being away from home? There's so much that go into it. But how you're raised and how you're taught on and off the court have so much to do with it. And I'm a coach's kid, which doesn't always mean that you're going to be a good basketball player. But I promise you, my mom and dad and my grandparents raised me to be the toughest and the smartest person and player that they could. They raised me to
Yeah.
try to be, live the right way, play the right way, and I think that was the main reason why I do have the toughness physically and mental that I do.
Well, both your parents are coaches, right?
Yes,
Yeah. I mean,
retired
you
now.
got it. Rich, well, not when you
Yes,
were,
coach
now
for
when you're
20
going
plus
through.
years.
Yeah. So
Grandfather as well.
you're,
My grandfather was in the Hall of Fame of Arkansas for women's basketball and baseball.
yeah. So you're, I mean, genetically predisposed to the toughness, which we'll maybe get into that here in a minute.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to take a quick break. When I get back, what I want to talk about is all those places you played overseas, because I know there were some hairy situations you were in and some tough. Like, what were I just want to hear what the worst ones were and what the ones that were like, oh, this is not worth it.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
I just want to hear some of the situations. So we'll talk about that when we get right back.
Yeah.
Less than 1% of high school athletes ever become professional athletes. But as parents, we invest in their athletic pursuits because we know it's worth it. Sports build vital life skills. Confidence, perseverance, and the joy they bring are invaluable lessons from sports. But what if your athlete is facing the other side? What if anxiety, apathy, and sorrow have replaced the joy? Well, I can help. My name is Matt Tillman, and I am a certified mental coach. And I understand the challenges young athletes face. I've seen mental coaching transform the mindset of many young athletes. It's not about turning them into pros, but nurturing their inner strength for sports and for life. At Mental Metal Coaching, we offer virtual sessions to help them tackle challenges, build confidence, and rediscover the joy of sports. Every young athlete deserves to thrive. Mental Metal Coaching, facing adversity with a smile.
The Mental Metal Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle. It's no secret why Quick Cut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today. And welcome back to the Mental Metal Podcast here with my guest, Skyler Bowlin, professional athlete playing basketball in Europe for years. And he went through this long list of 9 teams over 13 years, some multiple teams in a year, multiple seasons in a year. And I heard some stories just because our families talk, and I knew that there were some crazy situations you were in. And I just want to hear a couple of stories, a couple of the worst situations you had to kind of push through being a professional basketball player in Europe.
Yeah. I can honestly say that through my 13 years, I've made the right choices most of the time of where I should go play, right? I've never chased the money per se. But there was a few times that have been pretty wild. There's one season when I was in Greece and Poland that was a tough year from start to finish. But I'll start in Sweden, not because of playing in Sweden, but we were playing in obviously the Swedish league, and we also played in this FIBA Europe Cup, which is a level of international play where you play teams from all over Europe. So at that time, we were in a group with a team from Gaziantep, Turkey, right? And this is 2015-16. And if you look on the map, Gaziantep, Turkey is, I think, 30 kilometers from the Syrian border. And so, this is when the Syrian war was in full effect. And, you hear, the immigration, everyone is leaving, the terror attacks in Syria and then, all the war. And so we're supposed to go play there. Well, I remember we had a meeting, and the Swedish Federation of Sport were like, we do not recommend y'all to go to Gaziantep, Turkey. And I was like, okay, well, I guess we're not going then. That settled for me. That settled it. Like,
you don't have to tell me twice, right?
Yeah, like, okay. But we had a team meeting, and teams the entire season had flown in and out of there. So we decided, they didn't think it was a big risk. Cool. If y'all say so, I believe it. If you say it, I just want to play basketball. Cool experience. So we get on a flight. We go Stockholm to Istanbul. And I didn't have a phone that worked outside of Sweden at the time, and other than on Wi-Fi. And so we land in Istanbul, and we get there, and we're going through, and I think it's a 3 or 4 hour flight to Istanbul. And then Gaziantep is another 4 hours from there. So we land in Istanbul, and we're about to board the next plane, and one of my teammates is like, have you checked your phone? I was like, no, my phone doesn't work. One of my Swedish teammates, he's like, well, there was a terror attack, like a bomb right downtown Istanbul. And I was like, we're just flying out like nothing happened, and it's 3 miles away was a bomb that killed, 10, 15 people.
I got to go play some basketball.
And we're flying on to the next place. And so we get to Gaziantep, and it was just a surreal place to fly into. Now, nothing was really going on like that we could see as far as war-wise, but there was some, like, we were the only foreigners on the plane, on this small plane traveling from Istanbul to Gaziantep. And there was, we get to the airport in Gaziantep, really small airport, and it's like a reunion for all of these, I'm assuming, migrant families that are trying to get back into Syria maybe for some reason. That it was just such a powerful thing. You get there and there's people crying, and they're like reunions and stuff, and we're there playing basketball. It was such a crazy experience to walk through, and we have police escorts for the first time in my life, going through the airport and driving to the city, and we get to the city in our hotel, and there's United Nations vehicles there, and going from the hotel to the gym, police escort, and it was just like such a we're playing basketball, and people are 30 kilometers away dying, Aleppo is right there. And it's just, that was like my first welcome, like, to the real world. Like, I'm playing basketball. Like, this is easy. And, when such tragedy is happening very close to you, so that was a crazy experience.
So so when you're flying in, you're going through all this, you see this, what's going on. How do you prepare for a game?
I don't think I knew what was going on at the time. I was like, I didn't understand, and I was still young-ish, and for me, I was just going to play basketball, and it was a big. What was also the side note was going to there. We expected to get killed, first of all, because this team was budget-wise, they're paying these guys big money. if you follow basketball really closely, you'll remember Andy Routens from Syracuse, Jawad Williams from North Carolina, Earl Clark played at Indiana, I believe. They had these big names, older guys that played there. So this team's paying a ton of money for these guys to live in Gaziantep, Turkey. And then on top of that, 4 of our guys got food poisoning, plus our head and assistant coach. So we go with 8 guys and our third assistant, who was only at practice like 2 days a week, you know. So like, and we get there, we actually competed for a half, and then they beat us by I think 20 to end the game, and you
Yeah.
know, but it is like, you know, it was an opportunity, you know, and at that point in my career, you just look for the next opportunity because all it takes is one game to play well against a team from Turkey, and you know, boom, you maybe get seen by another team from another country, which is what happened to me because we played in this European competition. That's how I got into Germany. So like, yeah, it wasn't easy for sure, but you had to just, you know, there was no one in the stands. I remember like very few people, and you just have to lock in and say, hey, I'm playing the game. Let's go have fun, see what happens. Because there was virtually no pressure on us.
No, and that does help, but it's
Yeah.
still,
No, it's
yeah.
still when you sit back and think, you're like, that's crazy that, you know, you can see probably, you know, not far away, drive and see crazy stuff happening across the
I'm
border.
sure, I'm sure Mama Darlene was sitting at home trying to be like, I can't, like,
Jeez. I remember her and my grandparents were just like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you going to this place?" And, you know, we were just going to play basketball. You know, it was
yeah,
crazy.
I'll
Yeah,
be
it was
fine.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then really like, and again, I was very lucky in Germany. It was about the safest place you can go and play basketball. But then
Hmm.
you know, COVID hit. I had my son March 30th of 2020. So my season in Germany ended um, March 11th. They canceled the season, and
Right.
so season canceled, and then boom, borders start shutting down. My wife is from Denmark. Luca is due March 28th or 30th, and so we can't go anywhere because we're there. And boom, everything shuts down. I think a week later, and we have Luca. I'm barely allowed in the hospital to see him be born. Thankfully, I was allowed, but then I couldn't get into Denmark, even though we were married, because it was just for Danish citizens. We couldn't be around anyone inside in Germany because the rule was you could only be with the people in your household. So, you know, we're brand new parents bringing home
Yep.
a newborn and can't see a soul for 6 weeks. We couldn't leave. Everything was shut down. Couldn't get his birth certificate. Couldn't get a passport. And so like that was a wild experience looking back on it. Also was, you know, I'm having a newborn kid in a foreign country. My wife also in a foreign country. Like my mom was supposed to be there, her mom was supposed to be there, and then you know we're kind of alone during COVID where no one knows what it is at the time, and that was a really crazy experience outside
You
of
want to talk,
basketball.
yeah, you want to talk about just a terrible, like, worst case scenario for having that first kid. Like,
Worst
no
case,
fan.
and looking back, it
Yes.
was actually pretty awesome because we were really able just to spend time with each other. I was there because during the season, you know, I was going to be in and out if we were playing, but you know, we were there. We were locked in. You know, 6 weeks of just stuck in the house taking care of the little guy. Like,
Yeah.
but yes, definitely worst case scenario of like having any help at all.
Yeah. No, oh, yeah, I know it's a tough time for everybody, but that's just
Yeah,
that.
it
And
was
that's part of
wild.
the thing is about being like, that's a part of the thing is going, it's not just the basketball. The basketball takes up some of your day, but you've
Yes,
lived in all these different countries and every one of them's a little bit different. And you have to learn the
all of them.
culture. You have to learn
Absolutely.
what's going on. And that's part of your mindset.
Yeah, like it's you know I think the most important thing like someone told me when I came over here is to like dive into the culture. Don't
Mhm.
isolate yourself in your room, and that's what I did the first. I remember 2 or 3 weeks of coming over here for the first time. Like you know I didn't speak the language, couldn't drive a stick shift car that they gave me, didn't know what to do, and I just remember I was in my room when I wasn't practicing. I just went home and waited for people to wake up, and so I could talk to them, you know. And just like I was talking to one of my older teammates, and he was like, "Dude, go downtown, walk around, just try to learn the language." You know, they gave us German lessons, which was looking back on it amazing. I speak a little bit of German now. You know, that was my base, and then I ended up coming back to Germany 4 years later, and I was able to start at a ahead, and I actually learned a ton. So like diving into the culture and just really getting to know your teammates and the fans, because most of these clubs over here are, especially in the lower levels, are volunteer clubs, and they just want to be around the guys and they just want to be a part of it. And and when you dive into that, like, you will get so much love back. And that's when you get invites to go eat at people's houses, and then you get even more intertwined in it. And it's such a cool experience to have when you just go all in and buy into the whole experience rather than just basketball.
I agree. I think that's a fantastic, and what an experience for you. Like you said,
Yeah.
as we talked before, like you've never even lived as an adult in the U.S.
Yeah.
outside of college,
Yeah, we talked about that. It
which
was
is
just a crazy thing to think about, because in my opinion, home is Arkansas, but in reality, it's not.
yeah, yeah. So craziest in all these places, all these games? You said that one in Turkey, there's nobody there, but what's the craziest basketball environment you've played in? Because I know some places it can be a little crazy.
Yeah. So it's two. There's two answers to that. In Greece, it was also during COVID, right? So, like, supposed to be no fans, but Greece is, and I love the country. It's a beautiful country. I lived in a great city. But you talk about a crazy basketball environment or culture. I mean, these people live and die with the clubs, with the teams, and the rule was no fans, but somehow there was always like 200 or 300 fans there. And then at most of our games, along with that, with no fans, there was always like 50 or 100 riot police there also, because you just never knew what was going to happen. Like, it was Greece was by far the craziest place I ever played, and it wasn't even with fans. Like, there wasn't even a full house of fans. I had a lot of problems in Greece with fans. Social media, them messaging you on social media. I remember getting threats for my wife and for my son. Doesn't feel good to get those. You play bad, and those people don't care. They will talk. They will message you and tell you die and leave and get out of our club. You don't belong here, and that wasn't easy to take. I had a big issue with that. And then I remember the straw that broke the camel's back for me when I decided to actually leave Greece. No fans at the game. We lost to our big rival, and me and one of my teammates. Police everywhere outside of the gym, and riot police everywhere outside of the gym. Walk outside, and these 3 or 4 guys are just screaming in our faces. Like, me and him are walking, they're just screaming in our faces something in Greek, and like I flipped for a second, and we got into a very like bad screaming match, and didn't get physical, thank God, but the police were right there, didn't do anything about it. And that happened.
The police were just like, yeah, whatever.
They were just kind of watching, like, yeah, this guy sucks. He didn't play well, so this is okay. Like, that's kind of what it seemed like to me. But okay. But before that, I didn't even think about this. Before that, we lost this game to our, like, the same night, 20 minutes before. We're in the locker room. We lost. Our heads are down. We're on our second coach, and that night he resigned. So the third coach was going to come in the next day. 2 fans tried to come in the locker room. Like, again, police everywhere, riot police everywhere, but somehow these 2 fans got into the locker room and started running down the hall and trying to get into our locker room. And so, like, you're like, what is that? And so then we go outside and shower, go outside, and then get harassed by these idiots. I get home, I tell my wife I'm done. We're getting out of here. Call my agent, I'm out of here. And then sure enough, after I left, 3 or 4 fans got into the locker room and were throwing stuff at a few of my teammates, water bottles, and so I was like, that was it. So I left there. Thankfully, a week and a half later, I got to get out, go to Poland. Interesting experience there. They owe me a lot of money still, which is also part of the European experience, unfortunately. It doesn't have to be, but in some places, it's a problem. And this team is notorious for that, but I didn't care. I just took the first spot that I could get out.
Yeah.
So it was, they owe me a lot of money, but I was a great experience. I got to travel to Russia. I got to travel to Kazakhstan. That was a very cool experience, but I don't want to go back to Poland.
Maybe so we're going to take a little break, and maybe when we get back, we'll paint some of the good picture, right?
Yeah,
like, it's because what we've talked about so far is like
my experience.
No,
Yeah,
and I know it is, but I think we really needed to set the tone for people listening here that it's like, oh, you're a pro athlete. What do you have to complain about? Like, it's
yeah.
fantastic. It's
Look,
all perfect.
yes,
And because I work with a lot of hoopers and I have a son that would love to do this someday. And it's just like,
absolutely.
it ain't all what you think.
No, no, it's not.
But you got to love the hoops. You got to love the basketball. But there's things you got to know going into
There
it.
is, there
So,
is. It's not. Yeah,
so
it's a mix of everything.
we'll talk about the positives when we come back after the break. In a recent study done by the NCAA, it was revealed that 31% of male athletes and a staggering 48% of female athletes experience depression or anxiety at some point. As adults, it's crucial that we address these issues and provide the necessary support systems for the athletes that we care about. And that's where mental mettle coaching comes in. My student athlete coaching program is dedicated to helping young athletes develop mental toughness on and off the court. So join me at Mental Mettle Coaching, and together let's empower athletes to overcome the mental obstacles and enhance their performance and lead fulfilling lives. Visit the website shown in the show notes or contact me directly to learn about the program. Invest in the mental well-being of your athletes with Mental Mettle Coaching and see them excel. Coaches, empower your athletes to overcome adversity with the Mental Mettle Academy. Teach them to face and conquer hardship without adding extra pressure. Visit the link in the show notes and enter the code METTLE, that's METTLE, at checkout for a special listener discount. And welcome back to the Mental Mettle Podcast, once again with my guest, Skyler Bowlin, international man of mystery,
There you go.
basketball player. And we have talked a lot about the misconceptions that it's not all puppy dogs and rainbows and
Yes.
fat stacks of cash
No,
and all of
definitely not
that.
that.
But I really want to talk about some of the good. I know that you've had some very successful seasons. I know that
Yeah.
one year, at least in the basket league, is that how you say it?
Mm-hmm.
Biscuit, whatever.
Game, league,
I know,
yeah. Let's say that.
whatever.
Yeah.
In Denmark, I know that you guys won it all, and I know that you were MVP for the finals, correct?
I was MVP of the league, and then not of the finals. In Sweden, I
Okay.
was MVP of the finals, right?
Well,
And also in
fair enough.
Australia. Yeah.
So you've had some success. So
Absolutely.
talk
No,
about
it's
talk.
yeah.
Yeah. What do you love about it? What's been great?
It's first of all basketball, man. To be able, and this is, I think, maybe it's a cliche thing to say, but it's true. Is I get to wake up every day and go play a game and get paid to do it. And at this point in my career, lucky enough to make some good money doing it. Relatively speaking. That's the main thing. And I don't take that for granted. That's the whole thing. And I've never been burnt out. Of course, I've had my ups and downs. I've had times, for example, in Poland, in the finals in Poland, where I honestly couldn't dribble correctly because my mind was, I was just out of it. My mental toughness really took a hit there. But that's the kind of the beauty of it. Also, is the ups and downs.
Can we dive into that real quick? I
Yeah,
know we're talking
absolutely.
about the good, but if you're
No,
talking about
absolutely.
it at that point, how many years of college basketball or pro basketball had you had?
That was year 11. Yeah, year 11.
11 years of pro basketball, 4 successful years of college basketball, 4 years of high school basketball, and you forgot and you're a point guard,
Dude,
and you
it was
forgot how to dribble a basketball.
it was honestly, it was one of the most it was the most trying time of my professional career. A lot of things had to do with it. It was only the second time I had changed teams during the season. Going to a brand new team, a very successful team in Poland. They were first place in the league. Um, moving my family to an entirely different country during COVID still, which, empty gyms still. And then we're playing in a bubble in the semifinals and the finals. And I hadn't played great since I'd been there. I had had a few good games, but a lot of pressure on me to perform as it should be. and we get into the finals, and my confidence was at an all-time low, man. I remember being there, when I'm trying to impress my new teammates still, even though I'd been there a month, I think, month and a half. And I just remember I was in a deep, dark place mentally, away from my kid and my wife. They're back in Denmark because we're in a bubble, missing shots. And then I got a little deeper and then lost one game. And man, is that my fault? Got a little bit deeper. And it was just so tough to pull myself out of it. And to be honest, I didn't. We lost the finals. I couldn't have been more relieved to get this season over with, if I can be honest. I had an opportunity after that to go to France and finish the season for a good amount of money for 1 month. And I told my agent, I told my wife, I was like, there's no chance. I'm done. Like, I need a break. I was breaking down physically, breaking down mentally, and that's not like me. I pride myself on being tough physically and mentally. But at that point, it was just one of the lowest points. Now, I'm not going to say my life because I never make it life or death with basketball, but I do take it very personally. And it was a very tough situation to feel like you're letting down your teammates and your coach who brought you in to put the team over the hump. And it was a tough feeling. Last couple months on top of a tough year in Greece, was tough. And I did my best. I tried to stay positive. I faked it as much as I could, but I couldn't get over it at the time. And the things that had worked in the past weren't working then. So I had to figure some things out after that.
Why they never cut you that check.
That's exactly right. I had to beg for the first one.
No, so other than just saying, "Hey, I need a break," what'd you do to get out of it?
I mean, I think life is all about perspective, and that's an easy thing to say, but to actually like put it into perspective and think like, dude, this is just a game, even though I get paid for it, it is just a game. And, that helps me a lot at times, but it doesn't mean it just solves things instantly.
No.
There's no quick fix when you get into a place like that. As a shooter, when you miss shots, I think there's two ways to go about it, and it's different with every person. Like, do you stay in the gym and work until you can't anymore, or do you step back and get away from it and be like, hey, relax, and then it's fixed? So, like, in that moment, I didn't know what to do. I had a mental coach at the time who deals with a lot of NBA teams. He dealt with my team in Germany, and me and him were working on a lot of stuff and a lot of accountability ideas, and and it definitely helps, but it didn't pull me all the way out of it. So after the season, I just took some time with my family, and I got away from basketball for a few weeks, and then going to a new place next year. Obviously, it was just in my brand new start. I worked my butt off for the next month and a half, 2 months to get my confidence back in the summer, and brand new start in the next season was what I needed.
I think I loved what you said there about it's just not a quick fix.
No.
I mean, that's because that's what I do. I'm a mental coach and a lot of times by the time a kid comes to me, they're where you are right there. They've gone that downward spiral. They're really struggling, and their assumption, or maybe even the parents' assumption, is that, hey, well, let's have a couple sessions and we'll get, and like it took you longer to get in here. It's going to take you just that long or longer to get us out of it.
Absolutely.
And it takes a lot of work, like focused, intentional work to get yourself mentally right, same as it does physically right. It's the same thing.
Absolutely.
And that's, I love you sharing that and knowing that a guy like you, like I said, 11 years of pro league, and you're like, hey, I need some help from a mental coach to kind of get myself out of this, or I'm not going to be able to keep playing. It's that important.
I never, in the first, maybe that was year 10, I don't know, but in the first 8-9 years of my career, I never even thought about having a mental coach. It was just figure it out yourself, and then I got to Würzburg, Germany, and they had a guy that they used who was German but lived in the States and does this also for his job. And it was amazing. First of all, talking about it for a lot of people is not easy, right? Admitting that you need help. That's the first thing, is admitting that I need help to figure this out.
A lot of
Talking about it
and
is such a nice thing to have, to get it off your chest and help somebody else, open up a little bit.
yeah, and I think that's it's a little harder sometimes for mental or for guys as well, especially
Sure.
I mean, a lot of your play, you're the point guard, and you go play places, and you're the look to be the leader, and you try to at times be the alpha male, and you're like to go ask for help. It's a hard thing to do.
Absolutely. If you show
So
weakness, then you're thinking like,
oh,
man, the other guys are going to see this. They're going to, they're going to probably look a little bit different at me now if I'm the one struggling. And it's hard to lead whenever, like in my opinion, it was hard to lead when I'm not performing. But I
right,
think that's what makes the best leaders is that you have respect for everybody else, no matter if you're playing well or not. Like, they respect your work ethic, they respect your grind. And so I think that's what a really good leader is, just there at all times. And that's what I've tried to work on. And I've been pretty good at it. That year again was a bit of an exception, because I wasn't good. I wasn't a good leader. I wasn't a good basketball player. So it took a lot to figure that out. But yeah, just staying even kill, I think, is just mentally is a tough thing to do. But I think it's super important.
yeah. So and thanks for opening up on that. I really love it. That's exactly what I want to talk about. But go ahead and talk about that success you've had.
Yeah, I've been lucky. Again, I was put into some
All
great
right, time out,
situations.
time out. No. I'm not listening to that. I don't
But it's
buy in.
true. Okay, like, lucky is maybe the wrong word, but I've been put into situations where teams have wanted to be successful and put the right people around me, and I've been put around the right people to be successful. If that makes sense, right? Like, I
It
haven't
does. I
always
wouldn't.
gone. Yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't call that luck, but we'll keep going.
right, fair. But I've gone to places that have been ready for success, and my
Mm,
teams have pounced on those opportunities pretty well for the most part. Won won a championship in Australia my first 1.2 years. Like that
hmm
that summer after my first year. Awesome experience down there. Finally, my third year in Denmark, was able to win the cup, which is a mid-season tournament, and the finals there. The next year, going to Sweden, won the championship there. Um, Went to Germany, to the Bundesliga, which is a top five league in Europe, in my opinion. My fourth year in Würzburg, we made it to the finals of this European competition, which was one of the most incredible experiences in my career. We played a team from Sassari, Italy, in the finals, and just an unbelievable battle. I mean, to win a European championship would have been like just a huge thing for Germany, for the club, and we ended up coming up short, but just the experience was crazy. So it's a huge thing in my career. And then my last year in Germany, which was 2 seasons ago, we finished second in the regular season. Huge surprise for everybody, because you're playing against Euro League teams. And then we ended up getting beat in the semifinals against Bayern Munich, who's a perennial power in Germany and in
Yeah.
Europe. Ended up getting beat in Game 5 of the semifinals. So, like, and then last year here, my first year back in Denmark for the Bakken Bears, we also won the cup and the championship. So I've had
Yeah.
a lot of success. Like,
Yeah.
I,
You
I've been
came full
blessed.
circle. Yeah, you came
Yeah,
full circle
exactly.
in the Danish
It,
league, coming from
it,
Horsens to
exactly. Like,
Bakken, which is
yeah.
as did Keen, but that's a hey, it's professional, right? You go from
That's exactly right. A lot of people weren't happy making the move from me making the move from horses to Boston, but by far the best choice,
yeah,
professionally and family wise. But yeah, the success has been there, and we've worked for it. I've worked for it. My team has worked for it. I've been lucky enough to have great coaches. I mean,
hmm
really, like, the coaches that I've had. I've heard horror stories about guys having just
right,
bad coaches. That's always relative. Players say they have
sure.
bad,
Oh yeah,
but different type of coaches. And I've been, in my 13 years, I've been really impressed with almost every coach that I've had, and I've learned so many different things and styles, and it's been great.
I think that if you got time here, I think we want to do one quick break and then do another segment, because I really want to dive into the difference between U.S. basketball, Europe basketball, both from style, ability, and mindset. because I know
No.
it's different. So I would
Yeah.
love to just get your perspective on that if you got time for another segment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, we'll take a quick break. The Mental Metal Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle. It's no secret why Quick Cut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today.
Less than 1% of high school athletes ever become professional athletes. But as parents, we invest in their athletic pursuits because we know it's worth it. Sports build vital life skills. Confidence, perseverance, and the joy they bring are invaluable lessons from sports. But what if your athlete is facing the other side? What if anxiety, apathy, and sorrow have replaced the joy? Well, I can help. My name is Matt Toman, and I am a certified mental coach. And I understand the challenges young athletes face. I've seen mental coaching transform the mindset of many young athletes. It's not about turning them into pros, but nurturing their inner strength for sports and for life. At Mental Metal Coaching, we offer virtual sessions to help them tackle challenges, build confidence, and rediscover the joy of sports. Every young athlete deserves to thrive. Mental Metal Coaching, facing adversity with a smile.
Keep talking to him because it's a great interview with Skyler Bowlin. And I want to talk about the difference between U.S. basketball and Europe basketball. I'm going to tell a little bit of story of my experience. So I don't know, like right after, well, it would have been 2008. It's about, when did you graduate college? 2011.
11.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So about 2008, I moved over with my family to France for a year, and
That's right.
And I got in there, and I just joined. I did what you were talking about, immersing myself in the culture, and I joined a rec basketball league in town and do stuff. And everybody coming in as somebody they could clearly could tell played some basketball. Everybody's like enamored, like thinking I'm like, no, I sat the bench of some D3 ball, right? That's about it. But to them, it was a big deal. And the only thing I would say is the guy who ran the program and the coach, he played something somewhere over there. And that joker, I'm telling you, what I will never forget is his footwork was phenomenal. It was like he grew up playing soccer, decided to switch to basketball, and I paid attention a little bit, and that was just one little thing I noticed, that they play basketball a little bit different, and
they do.
That's from me just playing a little rec league. I gotta believe that first year or two, and then still what you see now. What differences do you see in the mindset and the way you play and all those things?
Right. I mean, so again, the game has changed since my first year over here to now. That's for sure. I had never really in college. I'm not sure I ever ran a pick and roll. And in European basketball, still today, but also 13 years ago, like pick and roll is a huge part of the game. And so that was, first of all, learning how to play a pick and roll my very first year was such a weird thing to do. And it sounds like an easy thing, but it's not. There's so many reads that go into it. And there are differences. And like you said, the footwork stuff obviously has to do with the skill work that they do, and I think each country definitely, thinks differently of the next. If you would ask people over here, like the best basketball schools come from Spain and Serbia. Like for whatever reason, the people think over here the coaches in Spain and Serbia and the youth academies in Spain and Serbia like really get the most out of how they do things. I don't necessarily know what that means as far as skill work and time, but like the best academies are for sure in Spain and Serbia, for being a small country. Nikola Jokic, for instance, they produce some unbelievable talent. Former Yugoslavia, Slovenia with Luka Doncic, and this is a side thing, but if you look at the top, 4 or 5 players in the NBA, arguably they're all from Europe. Don't get me wrong, though. The best basketball players teams are in America. Like the talent
It,
in America is the best. As far as being deep and as far as the athleticism, like that is America. But it is different in how they develop players in Europe. For example, in Denmark, basketball is not very big. So getting good quality coaching in the youth is not easy. The club that I'm in now, they do a phenomenal job of getting players at an early age, and a lot of former players volunteer to come back and help coach, and they do a great job. But there's not many places in Denmark that do that. So where if you go to Spain, for instance, or to a Germany, or the focus on basketball is quite a bit higher, and the fundamentals are taught hard at an early age. And you just see, I think, and I'm sure it happens also in Europe, but I know in the States, and you probably understand this and have seen it, and I know that Keen dealt with this also, but just because you're the biggest, that means you're inside automatically, and they put you in a box at an early age and stunt your development, in my opinion, very
yes.
quickly if that happens. And here, I feel like, of course it can happen, but they're a lot more open with everyone needs to develop every part of their game instead of just the big guy you stay in the middle or the big guy you stay down low. And I think that's a pretty big thing.
I think that we talk about how much basketball in the U.S. has influenced Europe, but then I think it's coming back the other way too. I think a lot of what they do over there with the footwork, like you said, you didn't run pick and roll in college, but that's not the case in colleges now. Like that's
Right, exactly.
and that
Yes, exactly.
and I think that the idea of that. I mean, I was always a defensive first guy type coach, but I think that the offensive ability and offensive mindset was more prevalent in Europe and is transitioning over here a little bit. So it's amazing how they're affecting each other.
It is. It is. It is. But whatever's trendy at the time is going from here to there, here to there. Like the threes from the analytical stuff that I feel like, I don't know if it started in the NBA, but threes are worth more than two. That's over here now. My coach, my last year in Germany, was very analytical. He hated us taking pull up twos. Like he would have point per possession or point per shot, and he wanted a three or a layup, and that's for sure a big thing in European basketball now, as well as the NBA. Like you
Yeah.
see how many threes are shot in an NBA game, you get like 40 or 50 sometime. I think it's incredible amount of threes, and 7-8 years ago, I don't think you would ever see that. I could be wrong, but I feel like that is obviously the 3-point shot is
You look at
continually developing.
You look at the guys that we used to watch, and I'm a little older than you, but watching the guys we watched growing up playing the NBA and their stats, you watch a guy like Reggie Miller and be like, oh, and his numbers aren't even more close to a guy like Steph Curry now. It's not even close.
That's why comparison, comparing all those things number wise, it's not really fair.
No. What about the let's talk about the mindset, the mental toughness and the mindset.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a struggle now in the US, and I'm in that market. I'm in that space with a lot of anxiety with athletics, a lot of, I don't want to say depression, but a lot of kids quit the sport. Like they're
100%.
so deep into it when they're young, and by the time they're in high school, they're like, I'm tired of it. What's the difference between what we see here, or when I say here, where I'm in the U.S., and where have you seen with youth athletics, if you've got experience with that?
Yeah, I'm around it a little bit. I am, and this, but it's very different from how we are in the States. But basketball, soccer are not school-related activities over here. So I think maybe there's like a pressure a lot of times in the States. You're in school and you just kind of want to join along because your friends are doing it and this and that. West over here, if you want to play basketball or if you want to play soccer or if you want to play handball or badminton, it's like a choice, like to go and your parents have to go and pay for this, you to do this. It's like a choice for you to go do. It's not just there where you can just walk into the gym after school and do it. It's not how it works here. You have to, go and say, this is what I want to do. Mom and dad, will you pay for this? Like, I think that has a lot to do with it. it doesn't always mean you get the best coaching or if it's the best option. I don't know what's better, to have it in schools or not, or for it to be a club sport. But I think that has a lot to do with it. Is like it is a I don't know. It's a choice for you to play also in the States, but it's like a more of a you're having to really go and do it instead of just joining your friends to do it at school.
Yeah, and I think it's different here because in the U.S., what's happening is if you're serious about it, then you do both, right? You're playing for your team and for your club team,
That's
and
right.
then it's
That's right.
you
That's
don't
right.
you don't ever get a break.
Yeah, and the burnout is a real thing. I know
Mhm.
that basketball and baseball it's year round now, and I'm assuming
Yeah.
American football also. But like and I get it. Like burning out is a real thing, and kills your mind, it kills your body sometimes. Like and breaks are extremely necessary. And if it continues the way it is, like I don't think that's very beneficial to anyone. Of course, you want to
No,
play and you want to work as much as possible, but there's a fine line on how that should go, in my opinion.
I think so too. I think that as you said, there was a time whenever you're talking about when you're struggling from shooters. Sometimes it's like I need to get in the gym, and sometimes I need to get away from the game for a
Absolutely.
little bit
Yeah.
and get my perspective. And it's hard whenever when you got a 13, 14-year-old kid and they never take a break. It's hard to gain that
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah.
And they feel like I've had athletes before that they feel like the only way to gain perspective is to quit the sport.
Yeah.
And it's like
That's the problem. Like, yeah.
and that's a problem because it's like and not only that, then you got some of the adults in the room and the coaches are be like, well, you if you don't play this season, then you're going to fall
Yeah.
behind and you're never going to
Yeah.
be able to catch up and you might as well quit. And that's,
Right.
man, to put that on a kid is unfair.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And
Well, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
well, no, and the whole point is you were, as you mentioned, you were a high school senior. You were 6'1", 150 pounds, and now you've played 13 years in the pro ball. And there's probably a lot of players that were recruited over
Mm-hmm.
you that didn't have near the success you had and aren't still playing. It people don't know as much as they think they do.
100%.
And that's me that's everybody. We don't know
Yeah.
how it's going to shake out.
Yeah, no, that's sport, right? Like you never know how it's going to work. You never know who progresses, or who grows, or who does this. It's all about a little bit of it about chance, but you just have to if you want something, you just have to try and go get it. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't. There's not one. I think we said it a bit earlier. There's not one way to do things.
No.
How I do things. I'm a guy. In the summers, I've never guys that say they are in the gym and shoot 1,000 shots a day. I'm not that guy. I'm one of the hardest workers in the gym. I don't spend 3 hours in the gym every day. I don't think you can do that and actually work on the things that you should be working on. I'm a guy, hour and a half in the gym, hour and a half, maximum hour and a half as in a workout, and you should be dead. Like I just like there's many ways to do things. Maybe some guys think they need
Well,
to do that, but I think if you work hard and you work on the things you're supposed to, you shouldn't be able to go much longer than an hour and a half.
an intentional hour and a half is much
Intentional.
better than 3 hours of I got some shots up. There's a difference. So
Big
being
difference. And
very yeah.
I think that's a waste of time. I tell any kids that I train or any teams that I talk to, like, it's cool to be in the gym, be in here as much as you want, but like if you want to get better, then you have to be intentional about your work. You have to shoot at gain speed. You have to do the dribble moves at gain speed. Use some imagination. That everything can't just be a cookie cutter, slow catch, shoot. Like in my opinion, that's not how you get better.
Yeah, I agree. Being intentional about stuff is huge mentally and physically.
Yeah.
So give me some advice, or not for me, but for anybody who wants to, you got these junior high. I work with some junior high kids, high school kids that play sports. Every one of them's going to the league.
Oh yeah.
Right.
So was I.
And so absolutely. But those kids that want to even would be happy doing what you did, because they're there. What advice do you have for them on, and that was there some you just gave me on the intentionality, and that is definitely one, but what other advice do you have for them?
I mean, the intentionality thing is so important. You know, you obviously, again, maybe cliche, but you have to make the right decisions off the court also. You know, you have to take care of your body. You have to, you know, do well in school. A lot of the stuff that has happened to me, of course, have to do, and a lot of the opportunities that I've had, of course, have to do with how well I've been able to prove that I can play basketball. But I've also gotten a lot of opportunities because how I am as a person and how I treat people. And I think that has gotten me a long ways in life, got me a long ways in basketball. Um, a lot of guys are better than me at basketball, I promise you, that have not been able to make 1 year of overseas because they have a bad attitude or they treat people the wrong way or they've made a mistake at the club one night and gotten in trouble and got sent home the next day, um, you know, just being a good person, being a thoughtful person, and then adding just a relentless work ethic and a strong mindset of, you know, just pushing. I had a coach like, and I've always had, again, I've had tough coaches in my 13 years, but I had a coach 2 years ago, Tuomas Isalo, one of the great basketball minds in Europe. He's a 41-year-old guy from Finland. And when I had him, it was the most eye-opening experience of my life. He didn't let you get tired. He pushed you. He had the physical and the mental aspect of the game figured out. And if he saw us getting tired in practice, he's like, "You're not tired. You know, you think you're tired. Your mind is telling you you're tired, but there's always more, right? If there's not more, you'll fall out." And like that's just really opened up a whole nother level of how much I can push myself. Is, yeah, you're running and you're running a suicide and your legs are tired and you slow down and you finish last. And in reality, you always have more. You always can push more. You can always reach that next step, but your mind is faking yourself out, telling you that you're tired, that your legs are. But no, like when you are able to unlock that next step is just such a game changer. And so few people do that. So few people do that, and never find that. But man, that was like what, and that was year 12 of my career, 11 of my
Right.
career, and I found that, and I was like, dude, that's powerful stuff when you figure that out. And we were supposed to be a non-playoff team, and he pushed our entire team to be a top 3 team in the entire German Bundesliga, and it was just like a wow, like these things you can always do more.
Yeah, and the mind is, and I guess that's the thing is I'm trying to like the mental ability is just as important, if not more so, than the physical ability.
If not more so. Like, of course, you have to be able to shoot the basketball. You have to be able to move defensively and laterally, and you have to be explosive to an extent. But like, you don't get to be really good at those things unless you have the really tough mental mindset to be able to push you to get past your comfort zone. And that's
Yeah,
when
and you
you're
have
better, is when you get out of your comfort zone.
and you have to work on it, just like you are your shot and
Exactly.
and those
Exactly.
sorts of things. But that advice you just gave, I'm going to be honest, that sounds like a lot of work.
It's not easy, man. But again, the most common saying that you see on the internet when it comes to working hard, but if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the most real quotes that you can say. Like if everyone would do it, but there's a reason not everyone does it. It's because it's hard, and people run away from hard things. People run away from things that make them uncomfortable, and that's why you see the greatest of the great of each, whether you're a basketball player, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a coach, whether you're whatever, like they work the hardest. It's not an
I,
accident that, yeah, LeBron James is blessed to have a 6'8", 250. But I promise you, if you ask any of his teammates, one, he's one of the best teammates they've ever had, and
mm-hmm,
two, he's the hardest worker.
mm-hmm. I, it's you're you're right. That physical ability has to be there.
Yeah,
You're not going to mentally be the best basketball player.
no,
It just has to happen. But we're talking about, like I said, every kid I work with, junior high, high school, whatever, is their aspirations are to go play pro basketball.
Yeah.
And that is a lofty goal. But if you aren't in the, I don't know what percent, like of all the high school basketball players, what percent make it to a league in Europe? We're talking about it's
Less than one, probably
less than 1%. So if
yeah.
your physical and your mental ability aren't on par with that, it's not going to happen. And I
No,
think that
it's
that's
not.
it. And I do think that sometimes kids that are blessed with those physical abilities, it hinders their mental ability because they're like, I don't have, you do,
Absolutely, absolutely, and
you do.
that's exactly what happens. That's
Yeah.
exactly what happens, and when you put both of those things together, and you figure it out, like a lot of guys maybe they have a session with you, right, and they tell themselves, "This is what I'm going to do," and they'll do it for a day, they'll do it for
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4, but then they lose that and then they go back to their old ways, right? And
Yeah.
then it's just a cycle that they have to continually figure out. But like again, the guys that figure it out mentally are going to figure it out physically at some point. You would think, but you just have to stay super determined on what you want to do. Like, and that's the thing. Like if you want it, you have to go get it. But the work that you think you have to put in, it's double that because it's
Yeah.
never that easy.
It is a grind, no doubt about it, the whole way. So, last question I always like to ask: what did I not ask you that I should have?
I think we covered it. I mean,
I could keep talking all day.
The good and the bad of Europe. Yeah, and we could talk all night. The good and the bad of Europe, man. That's always a fun thing to talk about because I have so many stories.
Back at Bakken this year, right?
Back at Bakken. This is year 13 back here. Last year of my contract. I still love it. I still enjoy the grind. Every day I'm working out here with the young guys. I'm the old wily vet on the team, but I love it, man. I still move well. I don't think I've lost too much of a step. So I think I want to try to get one more after this year if they want me. Don't think I'll be moving anywhere else unless it's back home. But let's see. I'm open to a lot of things because I want to continue to play, I think. So it's exciting. It's exciting. I'm in year 13, and when I walk into practice next Monday for the first day of preseason, I'm going to be just as nervous as I was day one of my first year, and that's what keeps me going. Like I told myself, whenever I stop enjoying summer workouts, then I'll have to stop playing. Whenever I can't get up in the summers and go work out on my own and get my work in I need to get done, then I'll stop playing. And I hadn't missed a day.
Yeah, kudos to you. That's fantastic. What a lucky career for you. That is, but no, it's just fantastic. I'll keep paying attention. I'm always keeping an eye on them,
Appreciate
and I still got some Bakken gear at the house here. I throw on once in a while. So I got a pair.
Come over and visit, man.
I think it's on the docket. It probably won't be for a game because but I think it's on the docket to come out, especially now because Keen has retired, so it's a little bit easier for him to hang around. So
no, it's a great. We live in a great city, one of the coolest small cities in Europe. Small city, 300,000 people. It's a cool spot.
Yeah, awesome. Skyler, can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast. It's been a great interview. Really thankful that you're doing it, and just every time I've talked to some successful athletes and successful coaches, Division I level, D2 level, whatever. And I'm never disappointed. I'm never disappointed that they iterate or, talk about the things that I'm talking to with young athletes that sometimes the parents and the young athletes think, oh, well, we don't really need that. And you guys, like the pros and the top tier, they're doing it. They are focusing on the mental aspects of the game, and they know how important it is. And to have that, I'm never disappointed. And I didn't even preface it. When I had you on, I was like, I know he's going to talk about this stuff because I know how important it is. Yeah. And so it's fantastic. So it's been great talking to you. I appreciate it. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Yep.
Coaches, empower your athletes to overcome adversity with the Mental Medal Academy. Teach them to face and conquer hardship without adding extra pressure. Visit the link in the show notes and enter the code METTLE, that's METTLE, at checkout for a special listener discount. The Mental Medal Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle. It's no secret why Quick Cut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today.
So you want to play overseas hoops, right? Or, you have a kid who does, or you have a player that wants to. Most of us adults that have had a little bit of experience, we understand that it's not as easy as it seems. But I think that it helps a lot to talk to someone who's been through it for, in Skyler's case, a dozen years. I mean, think about that. He grew up in America's, he playing hoops in America in Arkansas. And since then, he has not lived, he went to college, of course, for 4 years. He's not lived in the U.S. more than just coming home for a summer for a couple weeks. He's not lived in the U.S. for 12 years. It's not all that glamorous, not that easy. And it takes a special kind of player to be able to do that. He said it was so important. So he said there's a lot of players out there who are a lot better at basketball than I am. And I think that, a lot of people thought that when he was coming out of high school too. He didn't get recruited a lot. And it took a good situation for him in college to blossom. And it's taken him good situations in Europe to become where he's at. You heard him say he made peanuts his first year. He'd have been better off doing just about anything back here in the States. But now he's getting somewhere where he's, making a living at it and doing it. And then, about the time he's there, he said he's got a few years left, but 12 years in playing basketball is going to be going to wear a guy out. And I just think it takes a special kind of player. And he mentioned how important the mental aspect is. And I'm finding the more people I talk to, the higher up it goes, the more they understand that. When I meet with Division I coaches and players, they focus on the mental stuff. They know it's part of it. And now that I talk to a pro player, and I've talked to others as well, and I have another one coming up on the podcast, it is so important. They have to pay attention to it. You have to pay attention to that. It is as important, if not more so, than the physical aspects that we need to develop. And it hits people at different times, different ways. If you, like Skyler even mentioned, it was not a big issue for him for years. And then it just hit him one year, 10, 11 years into being a pro player. And if you pay attention to the timeline, it made sense. We had COVID. He had a kid. He's got a family. He was in situations where some things were threatened. His safety was threatened. His family was threatened. He had to leave. He went to a different spot. And things we do, for athletes, things we do or things we encounter off the field, off the court, definitely affect our play. And that's an adult, and it still struggles him. So for us coaches, as parents, understand that those things matter. And to just say, forget about them and just go play. You can't be thinking about that. It's hard to do. And it matters to be able to address some of those things and realize that, hey, the mental aspect is important and we should do something about it, rather than just say, don't be soft, just go play and forget about it. No, if there's stuff going on, it transfers. And to just ignore it can just make it build. And we talked about that negative spiral downward. It's hard to get a hold of. And I appreciated what Skyler said, that he actually said, I had to take a break. And he was in a situation where he could have kept playing for money, and he realized, I need to take a break, skip part of a season, skip the money. It's not worth it. And I think there's a lesson to be learned there for us adults, coaches, and the players, the younger ones. They're going to struggle with, they're going to have times of burnout. They're going to have times they need to, really can't focus and do what they need to do. And I think it's okay to say once in a while now that it's okay to say, hey, we need to take a break. We need to take a break for mental health. Now, you can't just say I'm not going to play an entire year, because, you only get so many. It's coming up as an athlete, and some things you just have, you're going to have to find a way to do it. But a break can be a weekend or a week, and it's not going to be the end of the world. It's not. Take your time, realize, hey, I can do more good mentally and ultimately physically if I step away from the game for just a little bit. It can be, skipping a weekend tournament and realizing, hey, I'm going to go hang out with my friends or go fishing or go, who knows what the kid's into, but it can do, a lot of help. And that's, as Skyler said, that's the only thing that allowed him to reset. Now, he also said he started to work on it. Okay. So he said, I needed to get away from it, but then he got back in and worked on it. And that you have to do as well. And he mentioned that there's no quick fix, which I love, because just like there's no quick fix to becoming a good shooter, or a quick fixer to being a good hitter, or, a tackler, it doesn't matter what it is. We know that it takes time to develop that strength and that ability in athletics. It's the same thing with the mentality. All right. You can't just learn a couple quick drills or tips and just think everything's fine. You have to put time and intentional activity into developing and building your mental health and having those skills over time and getting better at it. It takes time. It takes effort. And Skyler talked about how important that was, and it is. And I think that's a big thing for him. And then I also think that, he mentioned about intentionality, which, hey, that's another thing that I talk about all the time. You hear me talk about it on this podcast, how important it is to have that intentionality with your mental health. But then he also talked about the physical, about, the reason he can have some more time to do some stuff and chill out is because when he does his workouts, they're not these marathon sessions. He gets after it for an hour and a half. He's very intentional about what he wants to do, and he gets that done, and then he can go about his day and doing other things. And some kids and athletes need to do that. Right. So a lot of it, and he said, it's different for every person. You got to find your own thing and do it. And I think he's figured that out, but I think you got to put some time in to figure out what your thing is and what works for you, and being very intentional with how you want to do things. And honestly, just going back to what he said about there's other guys better at basketball, but yet he's been able to do it. And I think that's because he's a good human, and he puts time and effort into being a good human. And it's important not just for pro athletes, but if you're wanting to go to college, you got kids wanting to go to college and play somewhere. Yeah, it is not a coach in an organization they're not interested in headaches, and they're not interested in you being a problem. And if your attitude isn't right, and if your mentality isn't right towards your teammates and things like that, you may not get a scholarship. You may not get the contract. You may not get to play because of those things. So understanding what you have to offer goes well beyond what your physical abilities are. And I think that is something we need to pay attention to more. And we need to preach to our athletes that you need to be determining how you can be a better teammate, better human. And a lot of that goes with your mindset and the mentality on how you see things. So great interview with Skyler Bowlin. I picked up a lot of stuff. If you have an athlete that is interested about any of this stuff, about going and wanting to play somewhere and things like that, send them this. Don't sugarcoat it. Skyler loves it, but as he said, it's a grind and it's a lot of work. So Great episode. I enjoyed it. So I will, and again, once again, thanks for sharing, liking, do all those things. Share it with whomever. I love it. I love getting to talk to everyone about this. So until next time, I have been your host, Coach Matt Tillman, and this has been the Mental Metal Podcast. Thanks again for listening to the Mental Metal Podcast, produced by Coraggio Media, sponsored by QuickCut, a video management platform for every level of play, and by Mental Metal Coaching, helping athletes learn to face adversity in a spirited and resilient way. The Mental Metal Podcast is created each week to help players develop more mental toughness, and that is something that will help all of us. So help me out and like and share the Mental Metal Podcast with your friends. Until next time, keep forging your metal.